Hey there, team, and welcome to an update on the situation we have going on in Iceland. I'm geology professor Shawn Willsey. Today is January 8th, Monday. It is about noon here, Mountain Standard Time, 7 p.m. over in Iceland. It's been a few days since we did our last update on Friday, so I wanted to make you aware of a few things to discuss. It'll be a pretty brief update, but a few things worth noting. So let's go ahead and get right to it. Overall, what we've had over the last few days and the weekend is uplift at all our GPA stations in the region that we've been concerned with has continued. And we've seen some of those stations get to the elevations or limits that we saw before the December 18th eruption. The earthquake activity over the last at least 24 hours has slowed down a little bit, but over the weekend it was similar to what we'd seen last week and even a little bit the week before. So right now we're looking at, again, still feeling like an eruption is very likely in the coming days and maybe within the next 2 weeks or so. And so we're just kind of in that wait and see mode. But let's go ahead and look at some of the data. I think there's a few interesting trends there that we can look at, and we'll have some discussion as well. Remember, it's just a great way to learn together. Just as a quick aside, I've been trying to learn more about how these volcanic systems operate by delving into this textbook here, Volcano Tectonics from August Gudmundsson. And so I've been reading about how magmas rise from depth and dikes and sill propagation, all sorts of fun things. So it's a great textbook. It's a little bit quantitative. It's a little heavy on the math and the equations, but I think it's got some nice diagrams that are pretty helpful. Like for example, here's a nice little diagram of a ascending dike, and I don't know if you can see that. I might show some of these later. But some of these are helping me develop my own sort of conceptual model for what's happening in the subsurface. And I think what I'll try to do on the next update, which might be in a few days, is put together some of my very exciting handmade drawings that I know some of you love. I know others of you roll your eyes at, but I'll put together a couple of those that might explain what we're seeing at this point in time, assuming that we don't have an eruption between now and in the next few days. As always, if there's something big that occurs or if an eruption begins, I'll be sure to jump on as quickly as I can and provide you with as much information as I'm able to. So here's our seismic data over the last 24 hours. You can see it's largely been pretty quiet along this northeast southwest trend near Grindavik, and only a little bit of a clustering of earthquakes right here, just south of the hill called Selingarfelt, and maybe like 5 or 6 quakes right in this little region here. Again, mostly small, 1.1. Some of them are even smaller than that, a 0.2. But in the last 24 hours, that's what we're seeing there. So it's been, eerily quiet. We've seen actually more earthquakes happening in the days prior to today. In fact, if we go to the IMO, the Met Office page, and look at their map, shows the last 48 hours of earthquakes. And it's a little hard to see with the cluster of quakes there, and it's a bit noisy, but this is a nice way to look at the data down here. Let me make that a bit bigger for you. But this is just time. So this is looking at the last 48 hours. You can see some of these quakes coming and going during the day on Saturday night. So I had like a 2.5 almost, it looks like there. The quakes going through early part of Sunday, Sunday day into Sunday night. And now you can see these actually dropping off quite a bit. And so we had this lull here. We had this period, maybe like a, I don't know, 8 hour period today, Monday, with absolutely no earthquakes. And what we've just seen a couple since that time. So definitely a drop in seismic activity, which by itself isn't alarming. Sometimes these things come in, they wax and wane, but just something worth watching as we go into the next few hours into tomorrow and the next day. Doesn't mean that an eruption is imminent, but we've talked about the fact that this next eruption could occur with little to no precursor earthquake activity. So the fact that we're not seeing any seismic activity doesn't necessarily mean anything by itself. It all just is worth monitoring and kind of keeping an eye on. So that's the Met Office, and they did not have, at least when I started this a few minutes ago, yeah, they don't have any sort of update for today just yet. The update, most recent update is the one that we covered, which was last week on the 5th of January. Let's look at the GPS data, and let's pick the main site we've been looking at, which is the area near the power plant. So here's our Svartsengi GPS data. Again, if these are new to you, here's the elevation of the land at this specific GPS station, more or less constant in October. Nothing much was happening there. Then we had it rise in late October into early November. That culminated with, and of course, we interpreted this in this uplift with magma inflation. Magma was moving into the subsurface from a deeper level, was causing the ground above it to rise. And then on and around November 10th, that magma found or created a new pathway off to the east and formed a sill, that northeast southwest trending sill that I showed you on the map there. That's what the drop in elevation was. And then we had subsequent rise of the elevation over time, sort of forming this mini exponential curve here. And then that reached a crescendo with the December 18th eruption. Again, it dropped back down because some of that magma actually spilled out onto the surface as lava. And since that time, we've been watching this rise here. So let's look over there at that last corner of our graphic there. And so this is everything since December 18th, but you can see a pretty steady increase. We did note when we got to this period here, it looked like it was maybe stabilizing a little bit, or at least slowing down, but you can see it's picked back up a little bit. And so the uplift there has now exceeded that prior to December 18th. So at least at this one GPS station, the ground is a little bit higher than it was prior to this most recent eruption. If we look at a few other stations, let's pick the one to the west, the Eldvorp station. We can see, again, a broadly similar trend over time. And then let's look at the last little bit of data on this one. And what I think is interesting here, and we'll see this on some of the other ones as well, is notice that post December 18th, we've of course had the elevations rising as magma is recharging and inflating in the subsurface, but we're pretty close to that elevation, at least at this station, that occurred prior to December 18th. So while the only station that's reached that threshold previously in the last few weeks or so was the Svartsengi station, now we're seeing some of these other stations in the area reaching that December 17th to early December 18th elevation threshold. And so it'll be interesting to see, is that the trigger, right? Now that you've got the central inflation near the power plant, now we've got this lateral inflation along the margin of this magma body. Is that enough to break the system and cause the eruption? Or is there more give? Can the rocks stretch and bend and deform more as magma rises without breaking and actually causing the whole system to trigger an eruption? So that's the Eldvorp one. Maybe we can look at one more. What's a good one to look at? Maybe this one shows a similar pattern. I think this one is a little bit southeast. I'd have to look at the map. Let's look at the map real quick so we know exactly where this is. This is the SKSH station. So it is located... Oh boy. Oh, it's right here. So it's Svartsengi right here in red. We looked at the Eldvorp one over here, ELDC, and this one's more or less in between the two. So we're looking at that one now. So let's look at that one real quick. And I'll make sure I put a link to this, so if you want to deep dive all this GPS data, you can, because what could be more fun than that, right? So if we look at this one here, we see sort of a similar trend, although notice that we're not nearly back to the elevation of pre-November 10th, but we are more or less back to that December 18th elevation. So this broadly shows a very similar trend. Yeah, I mean, I didn't see any of the other stations show me anything remarkable, so I'll maybe just leave it at that. So what does all this mean? How do we interpret all this data, at least at this point? Some things to think about. So have we reached the elastic limits of the rocks above this magma chamber? As more magma is pumped into the system, the rocks are deforming, without really producing a lot of earthquakes, right? We're not seeing a lot of earthquakes really at all anywhere in this region over here. And so as that magma is pumped into the system, and the uplift is occurring, how much can those rocks deform and rise and move away from the central point without breaking? And that's really the question. And possibly we're seeing more stretching, if that's the right word, now than we did previously, because the system has had longer to be at these higher temperatures. And so if you have the magma in contact with a relatively cooler rock, over time, yeah, the magma might be cooling a little bit on that margin, but also you're heating up that overlying rock. And so even though it's not molten, it's not melted, by heating up the rock, it's able to deform more ductily or elastically, if that's the right word, but basically to move and deform without breaking, as opposed to very cold, brittle rock. Um, and so we're not seeing any earthquake activity in this area where we think this magma body is, for the most part. And so is that so if we started to see that, that would be a sign that the size and extent of the magma body was growing, right? If this thing was getting bigger laterally and in an aerial uh, sort of way, we would expect to see earthquakes occurring along the margins as this thing actually grows that way. But it seems to just be growing. It might be inflating and growing vertically without really growing laterally. Prior to November 10th, it grew to the point where it did break laterally, and that's what created the dike, or this northeast southwest trend over here, the one that threatened Grindavik. But we're not seeing that now. So what's I think the big question here is, where's the breaking point, and are we going to get to that breaking point? Has the magma influx slowed down? Doesn't appear to be, because we're still seeing uplift. So that uplift is a good sign that the magma is still being pumped into the system. When we see it slow down a little bit, is that just the crust not bending and deforming as much, or is that the magma supply waning a little bit? Those are all big questions that hopefully we might be able to address. But again, we're still focusing on this area in terms of where the eruption might occur. It's most likely to occur broadly, east of the power plant, on the east side of the road, probably somewhere between these three hills, well, in this region out here, more or less where we had this last eruption. So we'll have to wait and see. Let's see, what else do I have for you? Let's look at some of the news items that are relevant and worth discussing. One is that the Blue Lagoon, the popular tourist attraction site there, right in kind of at ground zero for all of this is happening, it reopened on this past Saturday on the 6th, and it looks like they're operating pretty much everything except the hotel. But it says here both hotels will be opening on Tuesday, the 9th, which is tomorrow. And then the restaurant will reopen the following day on the 10th. And that, I think, would put them at all their operations running at that point. I'm not going to comment. It's a tricky decision. This is a very controversial decision. In Iceland, there are those who think that operating the Blue Lagoon is a huge hazard risk, because you've got possibly hundreds of tourists and people there, right next to this known, or almost on top of this magma body, and right next to where this last eruptive site is. You have very limited roadways and access in and out of this site. And so it brings into question, how effective could an evacuation procedure be? Do they have buses at the ready? How are all these people getting there? I'm not sure. I don't know what the answers to those questions are, but they have allowed the business to open. So, and on the other side, I also see how, like, hey, this is a business. They're trying to keep salaries going for all the people that work there. And so you want to operate as much as you can, even during this time of unrest. So I do see it from both sides. It's a tricky situation. But right now, they've been allowed to reopen, and it looks like by Wednesday or so, they'll be operating all their facilities. So that's one interesting news item that was out there. And thanks again, as always, to Amanda Joe for providing these. She helps me sort of aggregate all the news stories, and I can pick through them and sift through them and find someone I want to share with you. I'll share all these in the links, but there's a nice article here from some of the Icelandic geologists talking about some of the things I've talked about here. about the uplift continuing and being right on the cusp of possibly of this thing reaching its limit. Right here, the magma storage is filling up and has reached its tolerance limit. The roofs and walls of the warehouse, meaning the magma chamber, again, the Google Translate, have been stretched as much as possible. It's like a rubber band. If you stretch and stretch, it gets harder to stretch the more you stretch until it breaks, right? So everything has its elastic limit. These rocks that are under stress from this magma chamber are responding elastically. They can deform to some degree given their properties and the thermal conditions, but at some point, as that pressure from the magma and its gases, as that pressure is exerted on those rocks, at some point they will reach a breaking point. We don't know exactly when that is, or what limit that would be. So, right, he's saying we could have an eruption or some event going on in the next few hours or maybe the next few days. So I think it sounds like most scientists, and I agree that, definitely we're talking days to maybe a couple weeks at the longest, given everything that's taken place and if everything more or less stays the same. And some other news, the wall, the berm that's being built around Grindavik. So let me show you that quickly on the map just to remind you. So we have a defense berm or wall around the power plant in the Blue Lagoon to hopefully divert lava if lava were to start flowing towards those pieces of infrastructure. The idea is that berm or wall might prevent lava from coming into the facility and causing damage. And there's another one being built here, kind of shown with this yellow line. So that's in the works. They've been working on that since after the new year, and it's being built at record speed. So that's great. And it has really gone pretty quickly. I mean, they're working around the clock 24/7 to get this up. The article here states that it's about uh, almost 1450 meters, so it's almost a kilometer in length, a little over about a half a mile, I suppose. Um, right now, it's 3 to 5 meters tall, but they have plans to make it a little bit taller. And so they're working on that. Now, one question I had from folks, just to maybe make this clear, is they're building the wall, but they're leaving the road open for now. So there will be a gap in this berm or wall where the roadway is, where the main highway is, and it's only if and when we get lava, moving towards the town, that they would, from I guess this side probably, or maybe the other side, I'm not sure, but they would uh, finish that wall off, build it across the roadway, complete the structure, and then see what happens with the lava flow. But for now, they're leaving that open. So lest someone think that they're actually sealing off the roadway and closing it down, they're not doing that. So until such time as it's deemed necessary. Um, yeah, so a little bit of an article there, and then there was some nice footage on this YouTube site that actually shows. I think this is from, yeah, the 6th, so this is from a couple days ago on Saturday, but shows some of the equipment work out there. This might be sped up a little bit, but you can see the truck's working hard, the excavator, and they're just kind of cranking it out. They're just working on quarrying the material, pouring it into place, and building that berm or wall. So kudos to the hard workers that have been so diligently working on this, both at the power plant, last month in December, and now here around Grindavik in January. So pretty awesome to see that. Um, let's see. I think that might be it for today. As always, I will keep you posted if we have anything exceptional or of interest take place. I might try to again draw a little diagram because I've got some ideas. I'm kind of noodling ways to maybe to show you what's taken place over the last few weeks, help you visualize things. I'm definitely a visual learner, so if that's a good way for you to learn as well, that might be helpful. So otherwise, just enjoy the other videos I've been putting out. I've got some new videos coming out from my travels in southern Utah and southern California and some other places in the West. I'm also dredging up some older ones that didn't get a lot of views because it was very early in kind of the YouTube uh, career, I guess, I suppose. One on Mount St. Helens I'm hoping to put out soon. A really nice comprehensive presentation of the full, more or less the full history of Mount St. Helens. What else? Just some other things that I'll put out there for you. So, but please enjoy those. Keep learning and growing with me. That's the way to do things around here. And I'll keep you posted if anything else big happens over here in Iceland. So take care and be well. Thanks.